All right, so without further ado, let's get to our program. If Sharon and Judy will come up. Yes. No, it's on the agenda later. Because no one trusts me. Yes, yes. You're on there, but I want you to have this first. So, Sharon, this is Judy. She's a snowbirder, but we forgive her. She does go back to wherever it is she came from. New Jersey, New York, New Hampshire, Massachusetts. Way up there. Yeah, I know you're glad to be here. So Sharon, this is Sharon Kalinowski. She came here, not going back anywhere. She's here. She's in Margarita, so if you don't get her, she's off and partying with whatever they do there.
Originally from Massachusetts, so I understand Jersey.
I know. So Sharon's been quilting for 30 plus years, and she started when she was 3. And first started using wool when she moved to Florida 17 years ago. Her applique group in Tampa had a small interest group working with wool, which she joined. She remains more of a plain Jane as it relates to wool applique, preferring to make smaller pieces as gifts for friends and family. Her desire is to work with other women who share the love of wool applique and learn from each other. Judy has been quilting for over 30 years, again starting when she was 3, and 20 of them included wool arts, which is her form of applique. And I've known Judy longer than Sharon. Judy never sits still. Her hands are never idle, so she never gets in trouble. She's taken numerous classes, taught them, been in clubs, and had many patterns throughout the years, and it's helped her work in wool to evolve. She is a step-out-of-the-box person and always looking to add her own twist to a pattern or design, incorporating different threads and beads in her design changes to make the piece more of her own. So I want to welcome you guys. We were so thrilled to get to do this, and hopefully I'll be able to finish my wool kits that I bought last year. Go ahead. Well, thank you for coming, and I'm hoping you're going to enjoy the program. I got involved with wool because I had a great shop by me, and when they opened the shop, they just, being back north, you have your wool mills, and you have a lot of shops that carry wool. So they were offering classes, and that's how I got involved with wool. And I enjoyed it, and when I did get involved, I joined, they had groups, and I find that it's really helpful to be in a group when you're doing any kind of a project, because you feed off of one another, you learn a lot from one another, and you really step out of the box too, a lot of times from that. And this particular shop afforded that. And we also formed groups outside of that, which I think is good when it comes to doing even wool. So I'm going to talk about, we're basically going to, I'm going to have Sharon introduce herself, so she'll do the first part of the program, and then I'll pick up and do another part of the program. So we're going to seesaw here. Thank you.
So I lived in New England, I lived in Colorado, and I lived in Washington State, all cold places where you think I would get into wool, but no, I waited until I came to Florida. It made perfect sense to me. As I said in the intro, my quilt group in Tampa, actually, some of you may know, it's called Feather Princess. They're a strictly applique group. And they had a small group that was doing wool. And I said, why not? Well, then I moved to Margaritaville, and everything's bright and colorful, and my wool pieces were not. So I put them in a box and I mailed them to people all over the country, family members, and so what I have left is a small sample of what I've done. But I am not addicted or as passionate as Judy is. As I said, I like to dabble. I like to do small projects. What I love about wool is you can take it with you, you can put it in a baggie, you can work on it in the car. It's very forgiving, and so I have a few pieces. This is basically all I have left from my wool. Everything else went to Washington, Colorado, and Massachusetts. But I like to do things that are small and simple. there's a table runner up here that's a turkey, and I actually made that in a weekend. I mean, that's how quickly it works out. So, I can hold it up. So, again, I took this back home when I was back home to my mom's, and I said, well, you know, she liked it, and I said, okay, well, I'll make it for her and I'll leave it here. And I did, I worked it up in a weekend. So that's me. And before I forget, my word for this year, I didn't really think about it as my word until we were just talking about it, but I have this thing I say a lot recently is, God, please give me patience. So my word is patience, whether it be with people or with projects that I'm doing. If you get upset, which sometimes you do, you know, just put it aside, and maybe sometimes you need to pray over it, who knows. And then you get inspiration and you can continue. So that is me. I've been here in Daytona Beach for 3.5 years, and as she said, I live in Margaritaville. So what I'm going to start off telling you is what this is and what it isn't. First of all, as you can tell, we didn't have a hands-on demo. Wool is fairly expensive, and we didn't want to have a demo. We want to maybe invite you to a class or a workshop. Put my glasses on, I can't see. And we're thinking that it may be the first week in March, somewhere around that time frame. And there'll be little or no charge, depending on the location and cost of materials that we may need to provide. But right now, what we're looking to do is have everybody bring their own project and their own supplies. So trying to keep the cost low. And Judy and I said probably no more than 20 people. There will be 2 of us, so we feel we could handle up to 20. We are also soliciting information. Judy's handing out a survey. If you're interested in a class, please indicate that. And also, if you're interested in forming a club, a small group, a hive, whatever you want to call it, you know, there's also an opportunity to do that. And basically, we would learn from each other. So Judy's distributing that, and if you would indicate on there whether you'd like to do a class, a hive, what your skill level is, it's all right there. And then there's a basket up here, and you can put your surveys in there. If you're not interested in anything, just forget about filling it out and save yourself the time. So, what we're going to do is talk about the process. Unlike working on a pattern for a piece pattern, you have to do everything in a certain way. Maybe there's a different technique and everything has to fit together. Applique isn't really like that. You're creating something, but you're not putting pieces together in the same sense that you would a pieced project. So we felt that teaching the process was more valuable because then you can take it and you can apply it to any pattern that you want. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. The process includes, first of all, choosing your project. Next, you purchase your supplies. Or you can shop in my closet sometimes. Some of you have done that. I have a bin, and there were a couple people here that said they were interested in wool, and I said, don't go out and buy a whole bunch. Come shop in my closet first. So we threw it all on the floor, and some people did get to pick, and that's an option later on. Then you have to cut out your pieces. And unlike cutting, you know, rectangles and stuff, you're cutting out designs. So you're going to cut out your pieces. Then the next thing you're going to do is attach it to the background. Then you're going to add the details. You know, are there vines? Are there, in Judy's case, she loves embellishment. You will not see a single bead on anything I create. I've tried it. I don't like it. So if you want to do that, you need to talk to Judy. And then you finish the piece. Much like you finish a quilt, we'll talk about how you finish it off at the end. So, choosing a project, first thing on the list, is easy, is intermediate, is advanced, and we have samples of those around the room. In my opinion, the things that are easiest are the things that have bigger pieces. You know, don't choose a pattern that's got, you know, little bitty circles and big and little bitty points and stuff. Choose something that you could easily do, or choose something that's a couple of colors, and I'll show you. This one. This is 2 colors. So all you have to do is pick 2 colors for your wool. You don't have to go out and do a mega shopping where you have to pick, 16 different pieces. So you can choose something really simple. Pieces were big, and this worked out really fast. Now you can go to one of Judy's projects, and she can show you how crazy you can get, and you can figure out what intermediate is by figuring something in between. But the process still remains the same. You're going to do things the same way. You're going to lay it down the same way. There's little tricks, but it's not like a pieced pattern where you make one and then you make another one, and it's a totally different approach. The approach is very much the same. So I told you about choosing the project. Now Judy's going to continue about purchasing supplies.
Okay. I got into wool because I didn't like needle turn applique. So that's what drove me to wool, because you don't have to worry about the edges. And not only that, but we were driving back and forth from Massachusetts to Florida twice a year. So it's very portable. So it affords me the opportunity to just grab it, and I can go with it wherever I go and get something done. What I want to talk to you about is the wool, because wool is very important here. There's all different kinds of wool, but the one that you work with on a wool applique is felted wool. Now you can buy 100% wool by yardage if you can find it, but Joann's has a blend, so you don't want to use that. And what you do with the wool, if you happen to find it at a consignment shop or use something, you need to felt it. And what that does is you take that piece of wool and you wash it in your washing machine like you would wash clothes. And you dry it in your dryer, even at a high setting. Because what that does then is it takes all of the fibers and it really blends them, and it gets very tight. So when you work with it, it doesn't fray. So it's a little denser, but it's a lot easier to work with. And typically, your wool is not sold by the yard. I am going to pass out cards from this quilt shop back north that I talked about. They have all the supplies you need to do wool. That's how I got involved. You can go online, you can order hand-dyed wool. There's the manager there, hand dyes all their wool, and it's all felted. When it's hand dyed, it's felted because you have to really almost boil it when you hand dye it. And you also have wool that's done in plaids or other designs. And it's not on the website, but you can call them and order it, and she can FaceTime you. You can also order it by the yard if you were looking for a larger piece. But basically what they do is they don't sell it by the yard. It's sold by either a fat eighth, and that is a 13 by 16 inch piece. And that's $10 typically. Or you can get what they call a fat quarter in a piece of wool. And that's 16 by 27. And that's $20. So wool isn't cheap. That's why you see a lot of pieces that have smaller pieces of wool. So if you're going to start a project, you don't want to get a big project done. And so they also will sell it to you by the yard. If you need a bigger piece, you just call them, and that's typical, I think, with any wool merchandise. They will probably sell you a bigger piece. But it's important that you use the felted wool, and it's not the craft wool that you buy at Joann's in the little squares. That's not what's being used here. Now, on the background, what I do is a lot of pieces, Sharon does wool on wool, and a lot of my pieces, I do wool on wool. When I get into the larger pieces, there's a piece, a triptych piece over there, that what I saw in a magazine, and it was done quarterly, and I waited and I knew I wanted to do it, And I didn't want a big wall hanging, but I said, I don't want to do needle turn, I want to do it in wool. So what I did was I did it on cotton. So I used cotton as my background. And when I use cotton as a background, I stabilize it. There is a product that Pelham puts out, and it's, right, it's 101, it's Pelham 101, SF 101. And I use that for the back of the cotton, and what it does is it gives it a little more stability. So when you're working with it, it's not limp. It does, it gives it much more body to work with. So, and because if you use one piece of wool, it can get pretty heavy and difficult to work with, because you're doing all of this mostly by hand. And so you can use cotton, you can use homespun, as you see the Joy pillow has homespun. You can use, some women are starting to use flannel sometimes as a back, instead of the wool and doing the wool pieces on flannel. They're putting out much better flannel nowadays. And so a lot of the women that I go on retreat with up north is starting to use flannel as a back. Not a back, but as the background.
Judy, would you be felting the flannel then? Same
No.
concept? No.
No,
SF 101 on flannel?
I would, because flannel is very soft, so you want something to give it a little body when you're working on it, because you're also going to be stitching through it. So just try to give it almost the same type of thickness as the wool that you're working with. So I always back it, just to be on the safe side. And then for the total in the back of it, once I finish the piece, I do the back in either wool, you can do it in wool, or you can do it in homespun, or you can do it whatever fabric you want. And you can either stitch the back with your little stitches, or you can do it by machine. The other thing that you're going to need is a thread. And the threads that typically we use is a Valdani thread, DMC. You could also use pearl cotton, or you can use wool. They also sell wool thread, which is, it's by the spool. And a lot of these threads you can get at HUS. A lot of your thread vendors are now starting to carry all of these. What is it? Eleganza? Yeah. Right. Yeah. So the threads that you're going to need is that, and then just check to make sure that they're color fast and they're not going to bleed. Not that you're going to wash it, but you still don't want it to bleed. And then the needles that you're going to use is also dependent on the stitches that you're going to make and also the thread you're going to use. The stitches are just minimal stitches at this time, and we'll talk about that later. And then you can use embellishments. And as you can see, I go crazy because I've done beading, I've done a lot of embroidery. I belong to an embroidery group also down here. And so I just want to dress it up, kind of, and just do my thing. I just like to add. I always kind of step out of the box when I do things. I always have to put my own twist on it. So there's a lot of options for you.
Go look around, they're just amazing, just absolutely amazing. So thank you so much for doing that. So moving along.